And every year on the date of the accident, it runs again as a warning to others, plunging into the gap, shrieking like a lost soul.
Percy, what are you talking about? The ghost train. Driver saw it last night. Where? Asked Thomas and Toby. He didn't say. Oh, it makes my wheels wobble to think of it. Huh, said Thomas. You're just a silly little engine. I'm not scared. Thomas didn't believe in your ghost, said Percy next morning. His driver laughed. Neither do I. It was a pretend ghost on television. Percy was disappointed. That evening, he came back from the harbour. Percy knew where he was, even in the dark. Crow's Farm Crossing. We shan't be long now. He liked running at night. The rails hummed and the signal lights shone green. But a broken cartload of lime lay ahead. Sam the farmer had just gone for help. Percy broke the cart to smithereens. Lime flew everywhere. He puffed quickly to the nearest signal box. Percy's driver explained what had happened. I'll see to it, said the signalman, but you'd better clean Percy or people will think he's a ghost. Percy chuckled. Do let's pretend I'm a ghost and scare Thomas. That'll teach him to say I'm a silly little engine. Toby promised to help. Thomas was being oiled up for his evening train. Percy's had an accident, cried Toby. Poor engine, said Thomas. Botheration! That means I'll be late. They've cleared the line for you, but there's something worse. Out with it, Toby. I can't wait all evening. I've just seen something, said Toby. It looked like Percy's ghost. It said it was coming here to warn us. Huh! Who cares? Don't be frightened, Toby. I'll take care of you. Pee, pee, pip, 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 pee. Let me in! Let me in! Wailed Percy. No, no, not by the smoke of my chimney, chim, chim. I'll chuff and I'll puff and I'll break your door in. Oh dear, exclaimed Thomas. It's getting late. Oh, I'd no idea. Oh, I must find Annie and Clarabel. It was morning when Thomas returned. Where have you been? Asked Toby. Ah, well, said Thomas. I knew you'd be sad about Percy, and I didn't like to intrude. I slept in the goods shed, and... Oh, sorry, can't stop. Got to see a coach about a train. Percy was none the worse for his adventure and was still enjoying himself enormously. He had heard everything. Well, 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 what do you know about that? Anyone would think, chuckled Toby, that our Thomas had just seen a ghost. In summer, the gangers cut the long grass on the line side, raking it into heaps to dry in the sun. At this time of year, Percy stops where they have been cutting. The men load up his empty wagons and he pulls them to the station. Toby then takes them to the hills for the farmers to feed their stock. Whee! Percy gave a ghostly whistle. Don't be frightened, Thomas, he laughed. It's only me. Your ugly phiz is enough to frighten anyone, said Thomas. You're like... ugly indeed. I'm a green caterpillar with red stripes, continued Thomas firmly. You crawl like one too. I don't. Who's been late every afternoon this week? It's the hay. I can't help that, said Thomas. Time's time, and the fat controller relies on me to keep it. I can't if you crawl in the hay till all hours. Green caterpillar indeed, fumed Percy. He set off to collect some hay to take to the harbour. Everyone says I'm handsome, or at least nearly everyone. Anyway, my curves are better than Thomas's corners. Thomas says I'm always late, he grumbled. I'm never late, or at least only a few minutes. What's that to Thomas? He can always catch up time further on. All the same, he and his driver decided to start home early. Then came trouble. A crate of treacle was upset all over Percy. Percy was cross. He was still sticky when he puffed away. The wind was blowing fiercely. Look at that! Exclaimed the driver. The wind caught the piled hay, tossing it up and over the track. The lion climbed here. Take a run at it, Percy, his driver advised. Percy gathered speed, but the hay made the rails slippery, and his wheels wouldn't grip. Time after time he stalled with spinning wheels and had to wait till the line ahead was cleared before he could start again. Everyone was waiting. Thomas seethed impatiently. 10 minutes late. I warned him. Passengers will complain, and the fat controller. Then they all saw Percy. They laughed and shouted. Sorry I'm late, Percy panted. Look what's crawled out of the hay, teased Thomas. What's wrong? Asked Percy. Talk about hairy caterpillars, puffed Thomas. It's worth being late to have seen you. When Percy got home, his driver showed him what he looked like in a mirror. Bust my buffers! No wonder they all laughed. I'm just like a woolly bear. Please clean me before Toby comes. But it was no good. Thomas told Toby all about it. Instead of talking about sensible things like playing ghosts, Thomas and Toby made jokes about woolly bear caterpillars and other creatures which crawl about in hay. They laughed a lot, but Percy thought they were really being very silly indeed.
Mavis is a diesel engine who works for the quarry company, shunting trucks and their sidings. She has 6 small wheels hidden by side plates just like Toby's. Mavis is young and full of her own ideas. She loves rearranging things too, and began putting Toby's trucks in different places every day. This made Toby cross. Trucks, he grumbled, should be where you want them, when you want them. Fiddlesticks, said Mavis, and flounced away. At last, Toby lost patience. I can't waste time playing hunt the trucks with you. Take them yourself. Mavis was pleased. Taking trucks made her feel important. At the station, Diesel oiled up to her. Toby's an old fusspot, she complained. Diesel sensed trouble and was delighted. Toby says only steam engines can manage trucks, continued Mavis. How absurd. Depend upon it, Mavis. Anything steam engines can do, we diesels can do better. Diesel knew nothing about trucks, but Mavis didn't realise this. Toby's line crosses with the main road behind the station and for a short way follows a farm lane. Frosty weather makes the muddy lane rock hard and very slippery. Toby stops before reaching the lane. His fireman halts the traffic at the crossing and then he sets off again. By using the heavy trucks to push him along, he has no trouble with the frosty rails in the lane. It is the only safe thing to do in this kind of weather. Toby warned Mavis and told her just what to do. "I can manage, thank you," she replied. "I'm not an old fusspot like you." The trucks were tired of being pushed around by Mavis. "It's slippery," they whispered. "Let's push her around instead." "On, on," they yelled. Mavis took no notice. Instead, she brought the trucks carefully down the lane and stopped at the level crossing. All traffic halted. "One in the headlamp for Fusspot Toby," chortled Mavis. But Mavis had stopped in the wrong place. Instead of taking Toby's advice, she had given the trucks the chance they wanted. Hold back, they cried. "Grrr, up," ordered Mavis. The trucks just laughed and her wheels spun helplessly. Workmen sanded the rails and tried to dig away the frozen mud, but it was no good. Everyone was impatient. "Grrr, ah!" wailed Mavis. Toby was in the yard when he heard the news. "I warned her," he fumed. "She's young yet," soothed his driver, "and she can manage her trucks herself," interrupted Toby. "They're your trucks, really," his driver replied. "Mavis is supposed to stay at the quarry if the Fat Controller finds out." Yes," said Toby thoughtfully. He and his driver agreed that it would be best to help Mavis after all. An angry farmer was telling Mavis just what she could do with her train. "Having trouble, Mavis?" chortled Toby. "I am surprised." "Gosh," said Mavis. With much puffing and wheel slip, Toby pushed Mavis and the trucks back. The hard work made his fire burn fiercely, and his firemen spread hot cinders to melt the frozen mud. At last they had finished. "Goodbye," called Toby. "You'll manage now, I expect." Mavis didn't answer. She took the trucks to the sheds and scuttled home to the quarry as quickly as she could. One day, Percy arrived at the quarry to collect some stone for his trucks. Snow and frost lay everywhere. There was not a sound to be heard. Percy ventured further. He found Mavis, the new diesel engine, resting in the shelter of some rocks. "Cheer up, Mavis," he whistled. Mavis was still remembering the trouble she'd had with trucks. "Manager says I don't listen to advice. He says I've no business jauntering down Toby's line. Toby's a fusspot." "Toby has forgotten more about trucks than you will ever know," replied Percy. "You must put the trucks where he wants them. Then you'll be a really useful engine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to take these stones to the harbour." Mavis liked Percy, but she still wouldn't listen to his advice. Why shouldn't I go on Toby's line? The siding arrangements were awkward. To put the trucks where Toby wanted them, Mavis had to make several journeys. She started making a plan. "If we use the teeniest bit of Toby's line, we would save all this bother." Her driver, suspecting nothing, allowed them to go as far as the first level crossing. A few days later, the weather changed. As the snow melted, the quarry grew busy again. Some trains were so long that Mavis had to go beyond the level crossing. Now for her plan. She would go further down the line without it seeming her fault. "Can you keep a secret?" she asked the trucks. "Yes, yes, yes," they chattered. "Will you bump me at the level crossing and tell no one I asked you?" The trucks promised. But whilst Mavis was away, Toby arrived. He decided to shunt the trucks himself. The trucks decided to bump him anyway. They reached the level crossing and Toby's brakes came on. This was the signal for the trucks. "On, on!" they yelled. Toby was away with the trucks screaming and yelling behind him. No one realized that melted snow had turned a stream into a torrent and the bridge above it was about to collapse. The rails were now like a tightrope across the thundering water. "Stop! Stop!" cried Toby. His driver fought for control. They came nearer and nearer to the bridge. The driver braked hard. Toby stopped, still on the rails, but with his wheels treading the tightrope over the abyss. Mavis was horrified and quickly came to the rescue. Workmen anchored Toby with chains while she pulled the trucks away. Then she helped Toby to safety. "I'm sorry about the trucks," said Mavis. "I can't think how you managed to stop them in time." "Oh, well," said Toby, "my driver told me about circus people who walk tightropes, but I just didn't fancy doing it myself." Later, the Fat Controller arrived. "A very smart piece of work," he said. "Mavis, you did well too, I hear." It was my fault about those trucks, sir," she faltered. "But if I could..." "Could what?" "Come down the line sometimes, sir. Toby says he'll show me what to do." "Certainly," replied the Fat Controller, "if your manager agrees." And so it was arranged. Now Mavis is as happy as can be, and the Fat Controller thinks she's really useful indeed.